Metroid II. Tell us about this game on the Game Boy from 1991.
Well, I never really played it. Seen some videos of it, but I am playing the. It's called Another Metroid II Remake. It is the technical name for it, but it's basically it's another Metroid 2 remake. But it's really it's a fan remake, which is why it got pulled from the internet mostly. There was I was trying to find it, and Joe Jubba ended up giving me like a copy that he downloaded.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a really thorough remake of Metroid 2, and at one point I got stuck in it. So like this is basically like exactly like Super Metroid in terms of looks. It's I want to say it's using either like assets that are directly from Zero Mission, the Game Boy game, or he like redrew them and they look very similar. But so it's like a complete skin over the entire game, and the map isn't like 1-to-1. But at one point I got stuck, and I looked up a map from the original, and I was like, and the shapes were very similar, so I was like, okay, I know I'm here. So, and there's this thing I need to get over here, and so like it wasn't in like exactly the same place as far as from looking at the map anyway. But I was able to find where I needed to go to proceed from looking at a map of the old one. So
yeah,
that's about as close as it is. And yeah, it's a really good like Metroid game. It's really well paced. Like you're getting missile expansions every few minutes. There's like I want to say I'm about 4 hours into it in terms of game time, but like I'm sure I've spent about an hour looking at the map and menus and stuff. It doesn't count that.
Yeah.
But it's just it's structured really interestingly because instead of like, okay, here's this one area and then you're constantly like moving back and forth, I've started to see like it's basically this one tower with spokes coming off of it. And the way it works is that this is like, I haven't played all of the Metroid games, but this is like the one game where you're fighting a ton of Metroids.
Okay.
And so the way it works is that you'll descend a little bit towards this one central path, and then there'll be a spoke off of it. And in this spoke, it'll say, oh, there are readings here, and there are X number of Metroids you need to kill in this area. It doesn't tell you that directly, but it says there are X, because the whole point of the game is you have to kill every Metroid on the planet.
Just genocide for Metroids?
Yeah, and there's a counter on the screen that says you have X number of Metroids left to kill.
Okay.
So you go into an area and it tells you, okay, we have found X Metroids in this area. And it, again, doesn't make this explicit, but when you kill all the Metroids in the area, like the lava level lowers a little bit. Like there are things that are obstructing your way that leave basically as soon as you're done with all the Metroids in that area. So you just go from one area, and then now after you beat that one area, you go a little bit lower, and there's another spoke to the side, and you fight more Metroids, and they add more Metroids every time. But the cool thing about it is that like I've only encountered like two types of Metroids. There's like a small one and a big one that you fight, but they basically have this one enemy that you fight, and they put you in a room with it in every possible formation of that room. So there'll be this really claustrophobic room where you have to basically run back and forth and try to jump away from it. And there's this one room where you fight it and it's like this really long vertical tower. And there's one room where you're running across a bridge and then the bridge collapses and then spikes start coming out of the floor. And by that time you have the space jump. So you're basically like jumping all over the place.
That's awesome.
In this big room. So it's like it's a really good example of like, here's what level design can do for your game. Because here's the same enemy over and over again, but we're going to make the fight interesting by moving things around and having you fight the same Metroid in different places.
It's such a cool idea to take like, I think there are probably defenders out there of Metroid 2 and the Game Boy, but it was a little bit slower. It was chugging on that hardware. It was really zoomed in, but I'm sure it's still like brilliant Metroid level layout and game design, like you mentioned. And just to take that and liberate it from that system unofficially and illegally. Yeah. It's awesome that people get to re-experience this now. If people pass on that Game Boy one to be like, oh my God, here's a new Metroid game.
Exactly. It feels like there were. I had to continue to remind myself, like, oh, right, this is technically illegal what they did, but because it is that close, it looks basically exactly like a Metroid game. And there's just so like there's one still early on in the game where they're telling you the story of like, oh, they needed someone to kill a bunch of Metroids, and they said, well, Samus kills Metroids, I guess. And there's one still of her where she looks
writing's
completely
brilliant.
fine, like her big like Various suit or whatever. It's got the big shoulders, but she's got this tiny little arm.
What?
Like they didn't draw it correctly, is what I'm saying. It's like it looks tiny compared to the rest of her body.
Don't look at her little arms.
Yeah. But other than that, like this looks immaculate, and you can tell like you can tell why it took 10 years to make this game, because there's a bunch of different options. There's like, okay, do you want the missile to be toggle or hold? Do you want the aiming style to be like Super Metroid or Zero Mission?
Okay.
And he has like all these different options that you customize the game with, and that feels like, okay, this is obviously like this huge enormous labor of love that took him a really long time to make. So I've been enjoying it as much as I did something like Zero Mission and like the half of Super Metroid that I played before I was unable to continue playing it. But
so if you want, hunt it down, copy that floppy.
Yeah.
Meet in a back alley somewhere and get a zip drive with.
You'll probably have to
remake.
ask someone at this point, because like there are people have been putting up like, here's the MediaFire, here's the torrent, here's the Google Drive, and every time it gets taken down. So it's definitely like, I'm really lucky that Joe had that copy, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to play it. I'm glad I did, because it's fantastic.
What other Game Boy games would you like to see given this treatment? Like, I was just thinking like
the first one I thought of was Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, totally, and like remake it like in the Metal Gear Solid 1 style.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that'd be so cool. Get on it, Konami, or fans of Konami. I don't know, not endorsing anything. But I'm trying to think, like, 6 Golden Coins, I think, plays pretty well for Mario game, but it'd still be cool to see it with, like, Mario 3 Physics or Mario World,
I remember there being, like, a Bugs Bunny series on there, like Crazy Carrot or something like that.
Double Trouble?
No, there was, like, 3 of them that people were all over those.
Really?
Yeah.
And just to see that, like,
I got to bring those
fully
up on
remastered.
replay. Yeah. I just want to see what those were again. But
Yeah.
for some reason that came to mind.
Liberate the Game Boy games, everybody. One at a time.
Bring 'em
We'll free
back.
those prisoners.